Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having a fabulous Thursday, no matter where you may be across this great country or this great land. We got a lot to dive into. Appreciate all of you just finished watching me on Clay and Buck. Tulsi Gabbard was fantastic. Lots to discuss. This Harrison Butker story has gone everywhere, and I got more thoughts on it. But right off the top, get in on the playoff action. Win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. PrizePicks even offers injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, that means a player exits the game in the first half and then does not return in the second half. PrizePicks will have your back, not count that as a loss. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes PrizePicks the #1 fantasy sports app. Download the app today. I'm going to give you some picks here in a little bit. And you can use the code OutKick for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code OutKick on PrizePicks. First deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I am rarely stunned. I am legitimately stunned by the reaction to Harrison Butker's take on successful life advice in his commencement address to a Catholic college that has taken the internet by storm this week. Succinctly, Harrison Butker says that many women, maybe even most women, are going to be more defined by their family than whatever career success they may have. And he talked about the failures of both men and women to grapple with the challenges of modern society. He discussed what he believes is a rejection of traditional Catholic teachings by many Catholic leaders, such as Joe Biden, and gave his own life advice, including a shout out to his wife, who he believes is a tremendous reason why he's had success and why his family has thrived. I don't understand how that's remotely controversial. And what I think it represents is, and I've said this for a while, but it just keeps coming home, we live in one of the most artificial ages of American history, by which I mean people say things that they don't actually believe because they think that other people will think better about them. And I'm kind of stunned by this because, for better or worse, I say exactly what I think every day. And I'll give you my advice as I would if I were a commencement speaker. So I don't know that anybody looks to me and says, you know, the guy who really has everything figured out is that Clay Travis guy. I don't think there's that many people out there like the best life advice I could possibly find on the planet, the best parenting advice I could possibly find, the best marriage advice. Like, I'm a mess. And I work all the time, like 80 hours a week. I'm on live shows 20 plus hours a week. There's very few people who are live for more amounts of time on a daily basis than me. And I try to be as honest with you about my life as I can. So let me just kind of pivot off of the Harrison Butker thing by saying this. The NFL felt compelled to condemn Harrison Butker. They did so through their vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't know why any company, and I mean this honestly, any company in America that is concerned with actual success needs someone to be in charge of diversity, equity, and inclusion. No company that I ever own will have anybody employed who's in the business of diversity, equity, and inclusion. OutKick didn't have a DEI employee when we sold to Fox. Big companies inevitably have bent the knee. They all have diversity, equity, and inclusion. To me, if your goal is to maximize profit, then you shouldn't need anybody in DEI, because the goal of any capitalistic organization should be to make as much money as they possibly can. That's literally the purpose of any for-profit corporation, in my opinion. Maybe some people out there are like, I want to run a for-profit corporation that doesn't maximize its earnings. Okay, you're probably going to be bankrupt one day because somebody else is going to maximize their earnings. But in sports, it's the ultimate meritocracy. Best man or best woman wins. And so when I saw what Harrison Butker said, yesterday I told you the truth, which is he would have gotten criticized far less if he had been accused of wife beating or sexual assault than he has been for saying men should be heads of households and, in his opinion, and women, in his opinion, are often going to derive, most women, he said, more satisfaction from being mothers than they are from their career. I don't see how that's remotely controversial. That's what I believe. I'm going to dive into this in a moment, but right off the top, I am married to a Vanderbilt law grad. I'm married to a graduate of Vanderbilt education school, got her master's. My mom got her master's, worked as a microbiologist. My grandma worked as a teacher in Georgia. Both of my parents worked for most of my life as state of Tennessee employees. Neither one of them ever made more than $50,000 a year. That's why both of them worked. My grandma worked in teaching in Georgia. Drove across the border from Tennessee because Georgia teachers got paid better. And she always said that my grandfather worked to live. He worked in the combustion factory in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She worked to make life worth living, which I always thought was a really good way of describing why both of them worked. I know many of you out there who are married have spouses that work. And that is oftentimes a financial requirement given how expensive it can be to live in many different American cities out there, and especially raise children. I have 3 kids, 16-year-old, 13-year-old, 9-year-old, 10th grade, 7th grade, 3rd grade. So let me just kind of give you my life experience as a parent. When we had our first 2 kids, we had a 2.5-year-old roughly and one that was only a couple of months old. My wife was working full time because we didn't have enough money to be able to just live off of my salary. I made around $40,000 a year before I started OutKick. Indeed, when I got fired, along with everybody else from Fan House, in January of 2011, the only job that I had was I was on a show called 3HL in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm going to be candid with you. I can't remember if I was making $40,000 or $45,000 a year, but I know it wasn't very much. Not to be, at that time, 33 years old, I believe, and have 2 young kids. My wife was working full time. She would get up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and she would go to the gym. She would work out there, and then she would go to the high school where she worked as a school guidance counselor. She's probably making around the same dollar figure. And I would get our boys up, 2-year-old, get him dressed, feed him. I would get the baby up. I would feed him. I would get him dressed. I would change his diaper. I would have him ready to go, get him in his carrying case, and I would go downstairs, put him in the car, and I would drive them to daycare. And I remember really well, by the way, a lot of those moments, what a frenzy it was, how you always felt like there was a lot you had to take care of. And I remember one day going down the back stairs of our house in downtown Nashville at the time, and it was an icy morning, probably like January or February, and I was holding the hand of my 2-year-old in one hand, and in the other hand, I had a baby carrying case. And our steps are outdoors. It was icy. We didn't have a garage. Car was parked in the backyard. And I was holding on to my 2-year-old. I hit an icy step, went flying up in the air, literally was like parallel, let go of my 2-year-old's hand, also lost control of the carrying case, hit full on the stairs. I mean, had bruises like crazy. My 2-year-old is in the carrying case. Fortunately, it's basically like a indestructible, those carrying cases, if you know what I'm talking about. He flies up into the air, boom, lands. He's fine. He's all strapped in. He's like an astronaut coming back to Earth if you ever put little guys in there. And I still remember, like, as I'm laying there looking up at the crowd on the icy stairs, my 2-year-old says, "Dad, why didn't you hold the rail?" Because I was holding your hand and I was carrying the little guy in the other one. I didn't have an extra hand, but I just remember laying there on the back early in the morning, Nashville, Tennessee, bruised, battered, kids crying. "Dad, why didn't you hold the rail?" So I would take my kids into that daycare, Victory Learning Centers. I hope they're still in business. They were fantastic for us. It was a very middle-class daycare in Hermitage, Tennessee. I would drive right down First Avenue as it turned into Hermitage Avenue, near, I think it was Donaldson area, Hermitage. I would drop off my kids, and every morning that I dropped them off, this is me being 100% honest with you, I felt like a failure. Because in my opinion, the fact that my wife had to work and that I had to take the kids to daycare and leave them there to be able to do my job made me feel like a failure as a father and as a man. And so I have probably erred because I know what it's like to not have enough money by working way harder, way more hours than I probably should have, because I wanted to ensure that I never had that feeling again. And that I gave my family, my wife, the 3 kids, complete financial freedom, that even if I was no longer here, they would be able to pursue whatever dream they have without fear of the financial challenges that might come from doing so. Because I remember so well what that felt like to have my wife getting up at 5 in the morning, going off to teach all day, and then that I was going to go back and do my jobs, run OutKick, do all of those things. I know what it feels like to worry about being able to take care of your family as either a dad or mom, whoever the primary breadwinner is in the house. And let me tell you something. When I started to have financial success, OutKick started to go well. I started to make 6 figures and really start to roll, which didn't happen for me till I was 33, 34 years old. And at that point, remember, I had a kid when I was 28, so we're talking about having young kids still at the time. I can't tell you how much better our life got when my wife no longer had to go to work. And we had the financial resources to be able to live on one person's income, and my wife could focus on the kids. Our life didn't get twice as good. It got 10 times as good. And so when I hear, having been through that, and by the way, my wife would tell you, I really pushed for a 3rd kid. I think if I hadn't gotten involved, I think she would have stopped at 2. I really wanted a 3rd kid. By that time, we had some financial security. I wasn't worried about taking care of them. To me, you could eliminate everything else that I've done in my life. The 3 boys are my legacy. And so they mean everything to me. And so our life got immeasurably better when my wife didn't have to work anymore, and we had the financial wherewithal to have one parent stay home full-time with the kids and the other parent focus on work. I think my wife would say that our life didn't get a little bit better. I think she would say our life got 10 times as better. Now, I'm not saying that what worked in my family's life is guaranteed to work in your life. But I think there are a lot of people out there that feel deeply unsatisfied with how their lives are going. You feel guilty because you're not there for your kids as much as you would like to be. You feel guilty because you don't make the kind of money that you would like to be able to provide entirely for your family. And I think that's the malaise, the dissatisfaction that Harrison Butker was addressing. And what we have to move from in this country, and I think it's almost entirely a function of social media, is the idea that if somebody says advice that doesn't reflect the life choices that you've made, it's not a personal insult to you. I used to ask my wife for advice early on we got married. Business advice, career decisions. And sometimes she would give me advice and I would not do what she suggested. Turns out that would upset her. And we would have conversations sometimes about that. I told you to do X and you ended up doing Y. And I eventually talked to her and I said, look, I ask all sorts of people for advice to make that I trust, not like hundreds of people that I really trust, to make sure that I'm not missing something. I want to consider all the different perspectives that are out there before I make a personal choice about a career decision, for instance. And just because I don't take the advice that you give doesn't mean I'm discounting it. Asking your advice in the first place is a sign that I value your opinion, and I want to make sure that I get as many perspectives as possible. I'm old school. I actually value diversity of thought, not diversity of color, which is a whole different story. Because I think only if you've analyzed a bunch of different arguments can you come to the best solution. By the way, it doesn't mean you're going to make all the best decisions. I lost $50,000 trying to sell colored pants, for God's sakes. I made a lot of poor choices in my life. I'm going to continue to make lots of poor choices in my life. But the great thing about life is you don't have to be perfect. You just have to make enough good decisions to be successful. And so if Harrison Butker gives you advice, and it is his advice and his opinion is most of you are going to be happier if you're women as mothers than you're going to be in your career, I don't understand how that's controversial. It is true. The happiest women statistically in America are married women with children. And I think really what he's hitting on is there's a great deal of failure in traditional gender roles these days. Women graduate from college at incredibly high levels, 60% rates. 60% of all college graduates are women. My law school class, my wife included, had more women than it did men. Women are achieving high levels of success. They're not finding men that match that success, but also their biological clock is very different than men's. A man can go out there, work his ass off in his 20s, 30s, and 40s, decide to get married, have kids, and not worry about the fact that he didn't have kids in his 20s or 30s. Now, there's different aspects of that can be good or bad. Really, when you decide to have kids, just kind of dictates when your life is going to get back to some form of normalcy. I'm 45. My youngest is about to turn 10. By 54 or so, my kids are going to be all off to college. I'll be done raising kids. I'll have hopefully 20 or 30 years of life where I don't have any direct parental responsibilities in terms of raising kids. Hopefully I'll have grandkids. That's relatively early because I had my first kid when I was 28. A lot of men don't have their first kid till they're 35 or 38. That's fine. But women don't have that same luxury. And I think what a lot of women are recognizing is, oh, I was sold on this idea that I could have it all. I could be a girl boss and I could also have 5 kids and I can be the greatest, most successful employee ever and the greatest, most successful mom ever. I don't think that's really very likely. Doesn't mean there might not be some super women out there who are able to have 5 kids and have the greatest success ever in their career. There's some that are maybe able to accomplish that. Most aren't. And I think that conflict between personal success and paternal success is one that is more of a conflict for women than it is for men. Because obviously we don't have to carry babies. I know I'm crazy. Women have babies, men can't have babies. I know it's crazy to the left today. But I think that conflict is what Harrison Butker was considering. That doesn't mean that it's wrong for a woman to be the primary breadwinner. We also had a great caller. She said she raised 5 sons. Her husband fell apart. I think one of the reasons why women are so profoundly unhappy is a lot of them don't feel like they can find a man they can rely on. Butker also talked about that. It's not only women wanting to achieve, it's women not having faith in the men in their lives to achieve, such that they don't want to have to ever rely on a man. Men have become, oftentimes, not worthy of being in a partnership with women. And I think a lot of men have to own this. How many men do you know, young men, that are incredibly ambitious and hardworking and want to aspire to what I did, even if I wasn't living up to it, to be able to take care of your family 100% financially by yourself? I think there's increasingly fewer men that aspire to that. And if you are not a superbly driven man trying to take care of your family, how many people out there that are women do you blame for saying, okay, I'm going to go get my own grad degree. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a lawyer. I don't ever need to find a man. And that's why I know a lot of women, 35 or up, who are freezing their eggs because they desperately want to be moms and they can't find a man worth partnering with. It's a real conversation we should be having. Why are so many successful women out there unable to find men that they want to raise a child with? Such that some women out there are just like, I'm done with this. I make $100,000 a year. I'd rather have a sperm donor than pick an actual man to partner with and raise a child. That's a pretty big indictment. And I think men have to own it. And I thought about all of this as I've seen the outrage roll in from Harrison Butker. I actually think he addressed something that makes people uncomfortable. And a lot of times when people get uncomfortable, they don't listen to the words. They decide to direct their discomfort through anger at someone else. And, you know, I've been talking on this show. I never would have believed we'd have a massive baby shortage in the United States and around the world. Everybody's all fired up about climate change. The population's collapsing. There's nothing that is more of an endorsement of humanity than deciding to raise children. If you believe the world is collapsing around you, then you're less likely to invest in the optimism that's required to have a baby. So I bring all that up because I think really what Harrison Butker hit on is that we need to have more deeper, more significant and meaningful conversations about what we're creating in the world today. Because on the far left, they want to create the idea that there is no difference between men and women. That's really what trying to say a man can become a woman is about. This idea that gender is an artificial construct and that really you can be any gender you want to be is really about trying to create, or that men can get pregnant, or we're going to say birthing people instead of pregnant women. This idea out there is that gender roles are artificial and there's actually no difference between men and women. Biology's real, and I fundamentally reject that. And so you're seeing lots of women out there suddenly on the left take up arms against Harrison Butker, and you say, okay, he didn't say that you couldn't become president of the United States. I'm here to tell you, if I became president of the United States, the thing I would be most proud of is my boys. Because everything else is just external noise. And maybe I'm unique in that. But I would give up everything that I have for my boys all to live healthy to 85 years old and have a bunch of healthy kids of their own. There's a lot of this other stuff. I mean, it's nice to have a lot of money. I feel fortunate now to have it because of the luxury and opportunity that it provides. But really what Harrison Butker was saying is life is about choices. And what I would tell you is the choices you make when it comes to children are probably the most important choices that you make as an adult. Do you have them or not? And if you have them, I can tell you based on my own experience that getting to the point where you can choose whether both of you work or only one of you works is an aspirational goal. And this is why I talked about starting off Clay and Buck today. We have a lot of people who talk left and live right. You notice how almost nobody in the NFL has spoken out against anything that Harrison Butker said? No pro athlete, by and large. Now, it doesn't mean that some of them might not decide to speak out because they want to be popular on social media, but it's because almost none of their wives work. And this is one of the great dichotomies I've been pointing at for a long time. The sports media and athletes actually don't have a very similar worldview at all. And left-wing sports fans are not reflected very often by athletes. Go look in that locker room. How many multi-millionaire pro athletes who are married with multiple kids have a wife who works? Small percentage. Doesn't mean you can't work. They have attained the luxury, because that's what it is, of only needing one parent to work. And given the fact that multi-million-dollar athletes are overwhelmingly male, they then have the opportunity to give their kids the opportunity to have a parent with them all the time. Given all the challenges in raising kids, and given the cost of childcare, which is a whole nother story, that is a really important conversation to have. Okay, I got to give you guys a pick. PrizePicks.com, way less serious. Tonight, Game 6 of the Nuggets series against Timberwolves. Nuggets on the road against the T-Wolves. I've got Jokic over more than 29.5 points. Jamal Murray more than 19.5 points. Michael Porter Jr. more than 1.5 three-pointers made. And Anthony Edwards more than 29.5 points. If that hits, a $10 bet turns into $100. Go to prizepicks.com. Use the code OutKick. Again, Jokic more than 29.5. I think the Nuggets are going to close them out tonight. Jamal Murray more than 19.5. Michael Porter Jr. more than 1.5 three-pointers made. And Anthony Edwards more than 29.5 on the point total that he will put forward. Last little bit here. The NFL condemned Harrison Butker. We've invited him on Clay and Buck, by the way. We'll see if he responds. City of Kansas City tried to dox his address. Crazy. And all of that, I think, is blowing up in the NFL's faces because I think the vast majority of players agree with him about this. By the way, breaking, this is from Adam, who's one of our guys that works on the show. My office, this is the Attorney General of Missouri. My office is demanding accountability after at Kansas City doxed Harrison Butker last night for daring to express his religious beliefs. I will enforce the Missouri Human Rights Act to ensure Missourians are not targeted for their free exercise of religion. That has been tweeted in the last 45 minutes by the Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Bailey. I just retweeted it. Thanks to Adam for sharing that with me. All right, last little bit here, and then I got to get, believe it or not, you know where I'm going from here? Photo shoot. I despise photo shoots. We have to do a lot of them as a part of the PR and promotional aspects of this job. I hate getting dressed up. I hate putting on makeup. I hate getting my picture taken. I bet I'm the only person in America who is on live media 4 hours or more a day on video, 3 hours on Clay and Buck, this show, plus all the Fox News hits, Fox Sports hits, everything else, that doesn't put makeup on. Who are like, you look old. No, I just look like a normal person. I'm 45. I look like an average 45-year-old guy. A lot of the people that you watch on television, almost all of them are caked in makeup. You actually just have an artificial version of what somebody on video actually looks like. This is just me. Better or worse? Nothing. Barely get my hair combed sometimes. I'm going to get makeup on for the pictures. I'm not happy about it, but that's where I'm headed. Last night, Caitlin Clark, debut in the WNBA. Make sure I get these numbers right, guys. 2.1 million people watched. Not a lot. I understand the WNBA is trying to trumpet this. Oh, this is our biggest audience in 20 years or whatever. That ain't good. That is a bad, bad number. Why do I say that? 18.9 million people watched Caitlin Clark in the last basketball game that she played. Iowa women's against South Carolina women's basketball. 18.9 million people watched. Everybody's running around talking about what a star Caitlin Clark is. Women's college basketball has always had a big fan base. And Caitlin Clark tapped into that. 2.1 million were willing to watch her in the WNBA. 90% nearly, 85%, whatever the math is, of the people who watched Caitlin Clark in women's college basketball 2 months ago weren't willing to watch her play 6 weeks ago. Not even that long. What are we? Yeah, like 6 weeks ago. Weren't willing to watch her play in the first ever WNBA game. 2.3 million. Sorry, 2.3 million watched. Regardless, 85% of that audience basically vanishes. Why? I was told that Caitlin Clark was going to revolutionize the audience for the WNBA. No. Women's college basketball has fans. The WNBA doesn't. Even the most popular women's college basketball player of all time can't deliver audience for the WNBA. Food for thought. Maybe it's going to change. Certainly people will say, well, that was on ESPN too, and it was going head-to-head with, I get it. Yet nearly 19 million people watch her play a college basketball game. Nearly 90% of that audience wasn't willing to watch her play in the WNBA. That's trouble. She better be really, really good, or Caitlin Clark is going to be Linsanity, and everybody's going to be like, it's WNBA, it doesn't matter. But at least they get to fly on charter airplanes. I'm Clay Travis, the DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. Maybe back tomorrow. I'll certainly be back tomorrow on Clay and Buck. I'm scheduled to be on Laura Ingraham on Fox News later tonight. I'll see you guys then. Now it's picture time. See y'all.